And it has been so much fun to hear from our preaching team. We have a preaching team here at Hope Church. We love to hear from the multiplicity of voices. It's been fun to see what psalm each person picked. In some ways, it's a reflection maybe of their journey, their story, or their personality. Like with Tim, we knew he would pick an imprecatory psalm. We just knew he would. So, some categorize up to 20 different kinds of psalms. It's important to know the genre, because when you're, here we are thousands of years later trying to read the scriptures that were written centuries ago, it's important to know what genre you're reading so that you can interpret it correctly. So, I'm not going to read that list, but today I am going to preach from a psalm of ascent. That's one that we haven't covered yet, a psalm of ascent, also known as a pilgrim psalm. So this psalm that we're going to study today, Psalm 126, is considered the seventh of 15 ascent psalms. In case you didn't know that, I'll quiz you later. Yes. And its lyrics reminded those who were singing it of the journey their ancestors made when they returned to their homeland after 70 long years in captivity in Babylon. And as those newly freed captives were leaving Babylon and coming back to Jerusalem, they were ascending. They were ascending uphill to Jerusalem. That's why it's called a psalm of ascent. So to give you a little bit of perspective, Jerusalem is situated on a hill, elevation about 2,500 feet. Some of you have been to Loon Mountain in New Hampshire. Loon Mountain, that's about 3,000 square feet. So to give you just a little perspective, so it's a hike, it's a jaunt. And then, so in the years that followed that return, those who returned, would have spread out in the surrounding region around Jerusalem. They would have, built new houses and got their farms up and established again. 3 times a year, they would have made pilgrimage to Jerusalem. There's 3 of the festivals that were considered pilgrim festivals. You would journey back to the temple for Passover, and for the Feast of Pentecost, and for the Feast of Tabernacles. So 3 times a year, you'd load up the kids and you'd make that trek to Jerusalem. And this is a song that they would have sung along the way. So as they're looking forward to their trip, they're looking forward to what's ahead, they're also looking back upon the history of their ancestors. I'm sure they're looking forward to who they're going to connect with. Oh, we're going to see so-and-so and so-and-so. We haven't seen them since last year, and our kids are going to hang out. Or maybe the kids will get to hang out with their cousins. We haven't seen them since the Feast of Passover, and it's going to be so great. They're looking forward to worship in the temple. Worship in the temple. Maybe they got their own little worship thing going on out in their fields where they work, the little village where they live, but the worship at the temple. Thousands of people gather for a festival. It's going to be good worship. But they had to walk uphill to get there. The road wasn't necessarily easy. Kind of reminds me of traveling with the kids. When they were little. We would look so forward to a trip to Grandma and Grandpa's house or a trip to a vacation destination, but just even the planning, packing the car, the checklist. Do we have enough diapers? Do we have formula? Do we have snacks? Do we have enough change of clothes? Should we take the portable high chair? I don't know. Should we take the pack and play? Eventually we bought one of those hardcover toppers for the top of our car to just pack it all in there, especially after we had 3 kids in the back seat. So, and then you drive hundreds of miles. You're trying to keep them entertaining. You're trying to tell stories. Dan is a history professor. The boys would say, Daddy, tell us about Attila the Hun, or tell us about Abraham Lincoln. And they would tell stories until they got bored of that. And then we play games, and you know what it's like. Long trip. And then they have to go to the bathroom, and there's no bathroom inside. So, anyways, long trips are a challenge. But, the fun once they get to their destination. So maybe you've walked or hiked, maybe you've ran, maybe you've rode a bike uphill. It's hard. You're sore, you're tired, you're winded. It can be physically taxing. I know I don't look like a cross-country runner, but I once was in high school, only because my best friend, Deneen, was, and I wanted to be with her. She was tall and long-legged. She ran like a gazelle. I mean, there was even a beauty to her form. And look at me, I run like a penguin with my little legs. But I wanted to be with her. And the experience was fabulous. Our team, our coach, it was so much fun, so I stuck it out for a couple years. So our coach would mix up our training. One day we might do a 10-mile endurance run. The next day he might have us all run in a straight line, and he would ask the person in the back to sprint to the front. So you're doing this combination of running at a clip, then sprint, run at a clip, sprint, and we just kept doing that. But some days, he would have us do the hill, the dreaded hill. Just several yards beyond our football field was this hill, this grass-covered hill. It was so random. And when he would tell us it was a hill day, oh no, not the hill. But it was so important that we ran the hill. A lot of the golf courses that our meets would take place on were like this, and he knew we had to be ready. So as these Jewish people are making their pilgrimage back to Jerusalem, they're singing this song. They're remembering their ancestors making this trip back home after a long exile. And yes, this journey, it was hard. It was hard for them. But this song helped the pilgrims remember what God had done. And maybe the song inspired them to endure their own physical challenges. They're ascending the hill. There's an important life lesson here. Like, I could give you this and we could say that's the end of the sermon. Like, there's enough there already. Sometimes life feels like an ascent, doesn't it? It just feels like we've always got one more thing to do, one more thing to take care of. Just the time that you get a clean diagnosis from the doctor, he says, oh, there's another spot we got to treat. Just the time you get that promotion you want at work, things change and your job is eliminated and you got to go find a new job. Just the time one dream comes true, another challenge surfaces and you think, wait, I didn't see this coming. Sometimes life feels like an ascent. And what happens on the way up? You get tired. You hurt. The air gets thinner. Some people hyperventilate and need oxygen. Your backpack gets heavy. And just when you reach a plateau for rest, we've all had those days, those stretches of days and months where, life is good. Life is good. I got the husband I want. I got the house I want. I got the job I want. And you're healthy and you're strong and your friendship circle is vibrant. And yeah, we all have those seasons and then, oops, something upsets the apple cart. And we're back to that ascent, that challenge, whether it's your job, education, your walk with God, overcoming addiction, solving problems, relationship issues, financial goals, setbacks, hopes, and dreams. And it can be exhausting. And that's why a psalm like Psalm 126 reminds us, look back and see God's faithfulness to you that gives you perspective. Look back and remember what he's done for you and your family. And be reminded that if he was faithful in the past, he will get you to your destination in the future. And where are these pilgrims traveling? Where are they traveling? To the house of God. They're going to the place of worship. They're going to go be with God at the temple. And so when you're climbing uphill, remember your destination. Fellowship with God. It's restored communion with him here in this lifetime. Oh, in the lifetime to come. Where we will be face to face with Jesus himself. unadulterated, uninhibited presence of God. So that's the backdrop to the Psalm of the Saints. But let's look more closely at this one. It can be looked at as two verses, two stanzas. So this is verse 1, verses 1 to 3. Chuck read this. And by the way, that's my son Josh. When we had ascended Mount Cannon Mountain in New Hampshire, we actually took the what do you call it? The electronic thing up the hill. Yeah, the lift. We took the lift. But once we got to where the lift let us off, we still had to climb higher. And so when we got to the top, Josh was so excited we made it to the top of the mountain in New Hampshire. So the verse says, 1 to 3, when the Lord brought back his exiles to Jerusalem, it was like a dream. We were filled with laughter, we sang for joy, and the other nations said, what amazing things the Lord has done for them. Yes, the Lord has done amazing things for us. What joy. So imagine being in a band of travelers, and you're singing this song like a road trip. You know, windows are down, you've got your Spotify plugged into the speakers in your car. You're all singing. We're singing this song of ascent as we're journeying to Jerusalem. And verse 1 opens with, when the Lord brought back his exiles. It was like a dream. It was like a dream. It was like a dream. Let me give you a little historical review. 538 BC. After years of disobedience, what the prophets forewarned came to pass. The prophets said this would happen if you don't yield your hearts to God, surrender your lives to him, your ways to him. This will happen. And indeed, Judah was exiled to Babylonian captivity. I want you to read 2 Kings. This is just a snapshot of what happened. The Babylonian troops chased the king. They overtook him on the plains of Jericho, for his men had all deserted him and scattered. They captured the king. They took him to the king of Babylon at Riblah, where they pronounced judgment upon Zedekiah. They made Zedekiah watch as they slaughtered his sons. And then they gouged out his eyes. They bound him in bronze chains and led him away to Babylon. And that's just a fraction of what happened. They burned the temple. They tore down the wall. They razed the houses. They stole all the prized possessions and belongings of those who lived in Jerusalem. They stripped them of their dignity and they took them as captives to Babylon. And there they were for 70 long years. So that's how we can understand why they felt like this was a dream. When we understand their sorrow, we understand why they felt this way. Some of the most heartbreaking passages in Scripture have to do with this exile. The book of Lamentations, rightfully named. Or Psalm 137, I want to read just a few verses. By the rivers of Babylon we sat and wept when we remembered Zion. There on the poplars we hung our harps. For there our captors asked us for songs. Our tormentors demanded songs of joy. They said, and I can only, picture how mocking they were when they said, sing us one of the songs of Zion. How can we sing the songs of the Lord while we are in a foreign land? For 70 long years, they were in captivity. For some people, that's a lifetime. My dad lived to be 72. My mom lived to be 74. That's a lifetime. And for some of them, it's all they ever knew. They were born into captivity. And then suddenly, one day, there's this new king, King Cyrus. And he makes a proclamation that allows them to go home. And I won't take time to read all of this, but I want to read what's highlighted. King Cyrus decreed, any of you who are his people may go to Jerusalem and Judah to rebuild this temple of the Lord, the God of Israel, who lives in Jerusalem. And may your God be with you. I wonder if it felt like a dream. I mean, imagine your whole lifetime in captivity, and then one day you get the news, you can go home. Some of them don't even know what home looks like. They've never lived there. They're in shock. They can't believe it. It's too good to be true. Pinch me. Is this real? I must be dreaming. But then it happened. And it reminds me of a passage in the New Testament where Peter had been imprisoned, and an angel rescued him. An angel led him out. And it felt like a dream. It felt like a vision. He thought it was a vision. And it wasn't until the angel had entirely got him out of town that he realized, oh, that was an angel that delivered me. And it felt like a dream. So you can imagine the joy as these pilgrims are going to Jerusalem. They're singing this song. They're remembering their history. They're looking forward to what's ahead. They're telling their children about what their great-great-great-grandparents endured. They're reliving that day of freedom as they're ascending up the hill to Jerusalem. Kind of like when we go to the Freedom Trail. You know, in Boston, we relive what happened. If you get a good tour guide, that's a great narrator. You're envisioning in your mind's eye what happened at the Boston Massacre or at the Boston Tea Party. You're reliving it. You're realizing, oh, that's a part of our collective story. And so these pilgrims are relaying the same kind of history to their children. So that's why these words are found. We were filled with laughter. We sang with joy. We are now free people celebrating what God has done. And verse 3 affirms their miracles, these miracles in their lives. Yes, the Lord has done amazing things for us. So as you are on life's ascent, look back and remember what God has done. Be encouraged and inspired by that perspective as you keep going. So let's look now at verse 2 of this psalm. It's verses 4 to 6. And it reads, restore our fortunes, Lord, as the streams renew the desert. Those who plant in tears and harvest with shouts of joy. They weep as they go to plant their seed, but they sing as they return with the harvest. Restore our fortunes. Seems to indicate that maybe their fortunes have not been fully restored. Restore our fortunes. And if we think about what historically happened, they had a much smaller temple. The second temple that they came back and rebuilt was much smaller than the grand one that King Solomon built. A lot of the holy artifacts were missing. They didn't have the Ark of the Covenant that held the 2 tablets with the 10 commandments. They didn't have some of their holy artifacts. And then when you think about, maybe on a more personal level, maybe their personal fortunes had not yet been restored. Consider that their ancestors had been robbed of their homes, their treasures, their resources, their livestock. Everything had been taken from them. So that generational financial blessing that would have been passed down to children and grandchildren might take decades and even centuries to restore. So in this psalm, while they're ascending, they're praying, God, restore that which has been taken from us. And this is an applicable psalm for us today. The enemy has stolen much from some in this room. If you grew up in a dysfunctional, abusive home, or you've struggled with addiction or substance abuse, or you've been the victim or the recurring victim of injustice, the enemy of your soul has robbed you. And many of your prayers may sound like this: God, restore to me that which was taken from me. God, restore me and restore my fortunes, Lord. And then as we look at the grand narrative of human history, all of it, we look back to Eden. We look back to that beautiful garden that God made for us, that place of uninhibited access to God, fellowship with Him daily, a place of perfection without sin. We're still waiting for the full restoration of that. We're still waiting for our resources to be restored to us, just as streams renew the desert. And then we find the psalmist speak of something very familiar to an ancient world at agrarian societies. It talks about harvesting and sowing and harvesting, planting and harvesting. And verse 5 says, those who weep as they go to plant their seed. Those who weep as they go to plant their seed. Did you know some seed is best planted after it's been soaked? So I like flowers. Over the years I've tried planting a number of different flowers. One year I tried to plant morning glories. So I read the package on the seed packet. It said to soak them overnight. They had a really hard shell. You had to soak them overnight, and then you had to take a knife and make a real gentle incision on the seeds, and then plant them. And that would help what was contained within to grow, and they would grow. Morning glories are beautiful. They love to climb up like a telephone pole or a tree, a vine. Yeah, they're gorgeous. So why would a farmer plant in tears? Well, I can think of some reasons off the top of my head. This is before John Deere air-conditioned cabs. This is back when, if you had an oxen or a pair of oxen, you're out there in the heat of the day. You're plowing, you're tilling the hard soil. It might be rocky. It's hard work. Or maybe there would be no personal benefit to you for your hard work, especially those who are in captivity. Their captor would benefit from their toil. Or maybe they didn't expect a harvest. I think back to when Pharaoh had a dream and Joseph interpreted it, and there was going to be famine in the land, and they expected it would not be a good year. But the farmer sows anyway. The farmer sows every year with the expectation that something will come from his sowing. That's the obedience part of being a farmer. If you don't sow, you won't harvest. If you don't sow, there won't be a harvest. And the same is true for us. Sometimes we sow in tears, but if we don't sow, we won't harvest. If we don't put the work into that master's degree, Trish, if we don't put the work into our marriage or other family relationships, if we don't sow, we won't harvest. But this passage seems to tell us that if you sow those tears in faith in God, you will harvest a harvest of joy. You just keep putting one foot in front of the other. You just keep showing up each day for work or for class. You take time to invest in those important relationships. You do the hard work of addiction recovery because of the expected harvest of joy that will come from your faithfulness to the task. And the tears that you have sown are never, ever, ever in vain. In fact, they may have watered the seed. I want to read a quote to you from author John Piper. When there are tasks to be done and you're full of sadness and tears, do the jobs anyway with tears. Be realistic. That kind of harkens back to our mental health series, right? It's okay to feel your emotions. Be realistic. Say to your tears, tears, I feel you. You make me want to quit life, but there is a field to be sown. Dishes to wash, a car to fix, a lawn to be mowed. I know you will wet my face several times today, but I have work to do, and you will just have to go with me. I intend to take the bag of seeds and sow, and if you come along, then you will just have to wet the rose. I love that powerful. Centuries later, Jesus would ascend a hill. The prophet Isaiah called Jesus a man of sorrows, and he climbed a hill called Golgotha, at the top of which he was crucified. He sowed, as he knew there would be a harvest of joy. He knew that the expense of laying down his life would buy our salvation. He knew the harvest if we believe in him, that we can have that victory. We can share in that harvest with him. You see, in the larger, grander narrative of human history, we are the captives. Our captivity to sin and to death, but Jesus redeemed us through his own tears as he ascended that hill to the crucifixion. Because of his ascent, we're going to be just like those exiles returning home. Oh, can you imagine the joy? Imagine, we have restored fellowship with him now, but imagine that day when we're with him face to face. We're going to say, it's like a dream. It's like we've heard about this our whole lives. Preachers have preached, our parents have told us, our grandparents have told us about this day. And one day we're going to be there and be like, pinch me, is this real? It's you, Jesus, I'm here. I'm going to go get to meet my mom and dad again. I'm going to get to quiz the Apostle Paul. I'm going to go see Dan's grandma and grandpa who are already there. I'm going to get to see loved ones who've gone before me. It's going to be the grand reunion of all reunions. And I'm going to be in the presence of God himself. Pinch me. Is this real? And it's because Jesus ascended a hill for me. So maybe you've been sowing in tears. Maybe it's been a season where you've cried a lot of secret tears. Maybe you've cried some public tears. You don't have to be ashamed of your tears, right? Church should be that place of safety where we can be vulnerable and honest with each other. But sometimes our tears aren't private. And we cry and we groan and we say, how long, oh God, how long until I see the harvest of my hard work? How long, oh God, before I get to sing a song of joy? And I want to encourage you today, look back, have perspective. What has God done for you thus far? And let that inspire you as you look forward. Yes, it's a hill. It's a hill. There might be a few little restful plateaus along the way, but it's a hill. But be encouraged that Jesus also climbed a hill for you. And we have a great harvest of joy waiting ahead for us. Amen. I'm going to ask everyone to stand this